Okay, so here are our ingredients for our bread and butter pudding. I'll show you some variations you can take here as well. First ingredient, 50 grams of raisins. Any dried fruit or nut can be used here. I say you can increase this as well. You could probably get 100 grams. So if you wanted to even do a variety of like currants or things like figs go very well in bread pudding. Anything that would be dried fruit would be lovely, or nuts. Pre-toast your nuts if you're going to be using nuts. The one thing that I'm going to be doing to this is rehydrating it. So all I'm going to do is take some water, warm water, and pour it on top so that they can hydrate. This is a potential flavor zone. You can use alcohols, fruit juices, other things to hydrate as well. So think flavor there, like a rum water with my raisin, then I get a rum raisin. I wouldn't soak them completely in pure alcohol. It'd be a little strong, but water dilution of alcohol would be very nice. I've got 5 eggs here, along with my butter that I've melted, 40 grams. If you want to, you can bring this to a caramelized color, sort of a burnt noisette, a burnt butter, so an aromatic, nutty butter. So I could cook this down a little bit more. I would reduce a bit of the weight, but you will get a great flavor from it. So if you are going to brown your butter before making your bread and butter pudding, I suggest increasing it to about 60 grams to compensate for the water loss when you cook it down. But that would be another idea for flavors as well. Another creative zone is spices. I'm going to be using nutmeg and cinnamon, but you can get very creative with your spices. I strongly suggest something like cardamom in summertime. It's a little bit more lighter and fresher than something as warm and spicy as cinnamon. That's just an idea there. I have my sugar for my recipe. I have 85 grams. Again, this is non-structural, so if you don't want to have a lot of sugar, you can reduce this, but do know that your bread and butter pudding without the amount of sugar will feel harder and not as dark in color. So those are your losses when you take out the sugar. And then here I have 625 grams of milk. Homogenized milk is the industry standard. And then I have 8 slices of regular white bread. Another zone for getting really creative. Croissants work amazing here. Things like brioche or enriched breads used as a bread pudding base just add richness. So white bread is your starting point, but move as you're going along making this with other things. Think richer breads such as brioche, or even something like a sourdough could make an interesting bread and butter pudding. So you can get really creative. The first thing I want to do is prepare my bread. So I'm going to move my ingredients off to the side. What I want to do is dry out my bread. So I've got a baking sheet here, my serrated knife, and I'm going to cut my bread slices up into small pieces. You can tear or you can cut. The idea is inconsistency is going to look a lot better than perfect squares. I like the look of something made inconsistently. It does make it look more artisan. And if you do tend to make everything too perfect, it looks like a robot made it. So it's important to have your own touch to everything. Ideally, you use stale bread for your bread and butter pudding. So I'm going to toast this in the oven, but you could just cut this the day before and leave it out to get stale and hard. So I'm going to bake this in a 350-degree oven just for about 5 minutes. I'm not looking for color because I'm going to be baking them. Again, I'm just looking to take the moisture out of them. While I'm doing that, I can prepare my base for my bread and butter pudding. For this one, what I want to do is crack my eggs into a bowl. I always like to use another egg to crack one on it because I find it's a rounded shape and you don't get as many shards. Okay. So I like to crack my eggs into the bowl, add my sugar. So this is going to help break up my egg yolks. So it's going to make a smoother consistency. I don't like adding the milk until I've broken the eggs up nicely. So I'm going to add my milk to this. Just like so. Now, I'm using room temperature ingredients because I have melted butter. If I use cold milk and melted butter, I'm going to get butter chunks in here, which is not the end of the world because they're still going to end up melting in the oven when we bake our final bread puddings. So the idea here is room temperature will prevent it from coagulating. So it's a good tip, but it's not the end of the world if you coagulate. So I'm just going to whisk and slowly add this, and then I can get creative with my spices. So I have about 2 grams of cinnamon here. You can get as much as you want or as little as you want. And then my nutmeg, I'm going to just grate on top. A good tip when you're searching for nutmeg, when it's fresh, will leach oil out of it. So if you scratch the surface when you are purchasing them, if you can do that, if it's not in packaging, and you see some oil coming out pretty instantaneously, then they're nice and fresh. If you don't notice any oil coming out at all, then they are dried up. I'm going to do about 1/3 of my nutmeg here. Just like that. Whisk that together. Now this is the base for my custard of my bread pudding. Again, any type of bread can be used here. So I'm going to set this off to the side while I wait for my bread to toast. Okay, so I'm ready to assemble my bread and butter pudding. I have my custard base mixed sitting here. I've got my hydrated raisins. I just have to drain the liquid from them. And I've toasted this bread slightly. You can hear it's a little bit harder. I'm not looking for color, just a little bit of dryness. So what I'm going to do is switch to the #1 tool to use in the bake shop, your hands. It's going to get a little messy, so try to have all your tools that you need by you. The other thing that I have ready and waiting beside me is my Bain Marie container with my 12 ramekins. So all I'm going to do here is take all my bread and toss it into my liquid. I'm going to drain the liquid from my raisins, just removing the water and add them to there. Transfer here. So all I'm going to do with my hands, rake everything through. If you feel a lot of liquid still at the bottom, you can add a little bit more bread or just allow it to stand a bit longer for it to absorb. I like to press all my bread underneath the liquid. Allow it to soak a bit. You will see a little bit of liquid that won't absorb, but this is going to be the custard in between the layers of bread. So it's okay if you've got a little bit of a slushy pool, but you do want to have most of your liquid incorporated. Okay? And then I'm going to just take small handfuls and divvy it up amongst my cups. I find it's easiest to use your hands, but if you are not into that, you can use something like an ice cream scoop. Now, these will souffle in the oven. That means they'll rise up and look massive, and then as soon as you take them out of the oven, they will collapse. It will be hard for me to get it on camera, but do not think of failure when that happens. This happens every single time. It's normal as there isn't gluten structure to hold the souffle in place. So it will rise up and then collapse. What I'm looking for is a consistent golden brown appearance all over and a nice souffle rise. Now with the extra, I like to just sort of pick and choose from some. With the extra liquid, this is delicious and this is part of it. So what I want to do is just divide this up amongst my remaining mixture. Now, once I'm at my oven, I'm going to fill my bain-marie with hot boiling water. I like to fill it halfway up the ramekin so that it incubates the ramekin, but at the same time does not get in there. It will not spill into and on top of your ramekin. Just like that. So these are ready for the oven. I'm going to put them in a 350-degree oven. They are going to take a long time, maybe about 25 to 30 minutes, but when I show you the final result, I will quote my bake time. Okay, so our bread pudding is out of the oven. I had it baking at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I put boiling water in when I put the bread pudding in the oven, and I baked this for about 40 minutes, no convection. When I took these out of the oven, they were just higher than the cups themselves, maybe just under an inch higher than the cups. So they were souffled up really high, but in 2 minutes, they fall flat. So do not be shocked when this happens. If you can run them to the table in those 2 minutes, then you can serve a souffled bread pudding, but this is also why soufflés are often not served at restaurants, because the servers have to run them really, really quick. So they are lovely right out of the oven. They are good room temperature. I would not eat them cold, so I would reheat them if you needed to serve them after this. I'm looking for the soufflé. So first and foremost, you'll see them rise a little bit. And I'm looking for this nice golden brown surface. So that's my way of telling that they're done. Nice dark color on the outside, and they have souffled all over. So they are domed, not just on the sides. The entirety is domed. Mine were 40 minutes at 350. Again, boiling water halfway up the side. When I take them out of the oven, I also leave them in the boiling water to cool them slowly. But if you are going to catch that souffle, you got to run as fast as you can to your table. So I'm going to serve this up. To get these guys out, again, I'm going to use the dull side of my knife running around the sides. Okay. This is a good opportunity to use your creme anglaise sauce. So my creme anglaise has cooled down. This is from the meringue and piping week, so that would be week 6. You can see it's really thickened up. It really coats my spoon. So really, really delicious stuff. So what I can do is unmold my bread pudding. Just pop it out with your fingers. I don't like to use things like Pam to prevent them from sticking. I'd rather lose a little bit of my bread pudding than have Pam flavored bread pudding. You could also cut a little parchment paper circle if you like, or serve it directly in your ramekins, which would be nice with a nice caramel sauce or your creme anglaise. So I'm just going to drizzle it all over my lovely bread pudding. I like to utilize the empty space of a plate. So I'm intentionally putting things off to the side. It gives things a bit of a imbalanced balance. So just by utilizing something here. Now I can always just add some chopped fruit for a little pop of color. That's always nice. But in our creme caramels from this week, we also have leftover shards of sugar. I don't know if you caught that, but I said pour any remaining sugar out on a sheet of parchment. And this is what happens after it cools. It will be sticky. That is natural with sugar. It likes to absorb moisture. So don't be shocked if it gets sticky, but do if you want to keep it for longer, airtight container. And I'm just going to drop this on my parchment paper and smash it up into small pieces. And I can use this for plating as well. I like to get some height and some different shapes. You do have to be careful serving something this hard. Remember, you could chip a tooth of one of your customers, so be careful. If you don't want to serve something like this to a customer so you don't get that a broken tooth situation, before I pour it out, I stir a little bit of baking soda in my caramel. As long as it's got a bit of color, it will foam up like sponge toffee or sea foam toffee. Just a little pinch in my remaining, give it a stir in, and then pour it out, and then that carbonation will allow it to break a little bit better on the tooth. So that is my delicious plated bread pudding. Enjoy your bread pudding!